Hello there, John Culturillo here, the life coach behind Your Listener, speaking to you from Melbourne, Australia on this rather wet January day. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everybody had the chance to do what they enjoy and to spend time with their loved ones and relax before another hopefully prosperous and eventful new year for them. I consider myself incredibly lucky to be able to do what I do, and so I'd like to welcome you all to my first video. Today I'd like to provide an introduction to my service and also life coaching in general. I've been asked whether these services can actually be effective, how they work. How is it that someone else can tell me something about myself that I don't already know or that I can't choose to do? And with the proliferation of a lot of self-help and life coaching content across various different social media channels, which I'm sure many of us have seen, is there room in the life coaching realm for new approaches? Today I'm going to answer some of these questions and hopefully prompt discussion amongst us, whoever we may be, but also hopefully answer the questions for those of you who are potentially considering seeking assistance with living your best life. The primary purpose of getting assistance from somebody else, whether it be from a counselor or whether it be from a life coach or another similar professional, is to teach you the underlying workings of your mind of which you may not be aware. Now, with the proliferation of information about how the mind works, including to some extent pop psychology, but also more rigorously scientifically tested psychology, I would say that we're more aware than ever about how our minds work. We're able to learn more every day, and with the proliferation of the internet, a lot of that knowledge is available to us. But as obvious as it may seem, the mind often acts on you in ways that you are of which you're mostly unaware. And as self-aware as no matter how self-aware we become, there are always ways that the mind is going to act outside of our conscious awareness. There's always ways that the mind is going to affect us in ways of which we're not aware and of which we sometimes can't control until we have a deeper understanding of what's happening. And so a life coach or a counselor takes the time to understand exactly what it is you're wanting to do in your life, what changes you'd like to make, and then addresses the barriers to them and teaches you about what it is that's happening within your mind that's potentially stopping you from getting to where you want to be. It may seem fairly, as I said, it may seem fairly obvious, but there are some lessons about the mind that can only be taught when somebody else, not just somebody who's educated in these topics, that's certainly important, but also somebody who isn't you and who isn't affected by your mind in the way that you are, can see what's happening and provide guidance from an external perspective. And that's something that only somebody else can provide. Not because you're incapable, but because it's simply part of being human to only have the ability to introspect to a certain extent. That extent is limited. Once we reach the extent of our introspection, we need somebody else to be able to provide an external perspective to be able to teach us exactly how we can overcome the challenges that we face. It's something that I believe is necessary to discuss in order to differentiate, is that life coaching is not a mental health service. Anyone who is experiencing concerns about their mental health, no matter how small or large they may be, should always consult with hopefully their healthcare professional first, their general practitioner, and get referred to or seek themselves a licensed psychotherapist or a psychologist. Life coaching is what I would call a lifestyle service. It's a service that helps you to take your life to where you want it to be beyond the basic matters of mental health. I would consider that having a healthy mind and feeling mentally well within yourself is a baseline. Now, it doesn't mean that a life coach can't help you when you do have mental health concerns, and I certainly don't discriminate. If any of my clients were to have a mental illness, I would certainly not decline service on that basis. However, I would want to ensure that they have a licensed professional helping them, and I would want to work with them on the matters that are more relevant to their lifestyle and their performance in life and their life goals, not so much on the matters of mental health. A good analogy that I find when it comes to describing what makes good interpersonal assistance overall is that a good practitioner is like a mathematics teacher. Just because you can't perform certain mathematical equations, it doesn't mean that you're incapable of mathematics. But to perform those equations, you need to be able to be able to have a certain understanding of mathematics. You need to have specific knowledge that isn't necessarily common to everyone, and knowledge that you're certainly not born with. So a good mathematics teacher will first of all teach you the knowledge that is necessary, and then they'll demonstrate how they use that knowledge. But then they won't ask you to simply take their word that the results that they're achieving with their mathematical formulas and their other knowledge, they won't encourage you to simply take their word that it's correct. They'll then show you the means of testing it. You can complete the equations for yourself, you can use the formulas, you can use that knowledge, and then you can see for yourself that those solutions are actually real. And good practice when it comes to life coaching and counseling is very much the same. In the end, I wouldn't want my clients to become dependent on me in the long term, because if our clients become dependent on us, it's not in their best interests. In the end, we need to be able to live life on our own and be able to make decisions. Sometimes there isn't someone around to make decisions for us. So providing people with the skills to test solutions for themselves and obtain the independence that they want is extremely important, and that is ultimately the goal for which I strive when working with any client. It has been in the past when I've worked with a variety of different clients. It remains my goal to this day. With the number of different approaches to life coaching that you may see them on social media, you may have read about them in literature, you may have read about them drawing on different psychological theories and philosophies from the past or even contemporary ones. You may ask, how much more can any new life coach contribute? Something that I will discuss in future videos is that having a theory or a framework to guide what you do is extremely important. So my goal is not in this case to discredit any other person's theory or preferred framework, whether it be a psychology framework, whether it be a more contemporary philosophy framework. It's not to say that other approaches don't work, but rather that, and I found that there are certain approaches that I believe are particularly beneficial, certain components that make a beneficial approach. The first aspect of my practice that I try to abide is, rather than attempting to explain every person's problems using just one framework, I want to understand the individual's problems first and then find a likely explanation with the individual, essentially embarking on a journey of discovery with that individual to certainly use existing knowledge from the history of psychology to possibly explain it, but I need to understand the problems first, and then we explore possible theories together about why those problems exist and how to solve them. I don't try to force any one person's set of problems into an existing framework, because I believe that that could potentially limit the number of possible solutions that we could explore and may actually reduce the likelihood of us finding a solution that's useful to the client. Something else that I find is particularly necessary, I believe, is flexibility in the way that I deliver my services. Some life coaches will work via selling packages, so they might sell clients packages with a certain number of different sessions. They have a certain number of maybe monthly telephone calls or sessions, a certain number of materials like self-help manuals or group classes, for example. Now again, that may work for some people, but I understand there are others who would prefer to take a more basic approach. They'd like to pay for sessions as they need them, and then judge from there whether they'd like to continue services or whether they feel that I've provided sufficient assistance and they're ready to proceed on their own. And so I charge only on a per session basis. Some self-help rhetoric that I'm also trying to I'm also trying to negate is trying to explain any person's problems in absolutes. You do see some of this rhetoric in the media and on social media in which a person will try to describe a particular phenomenon and make an absolute proposition about how it operates, its causes and solutions. For example, you should always avoid somebody who presents exactly like this because they will always be a problem for you. Or if you are thinking this, then this is definitely the problem. Now, sometimes those are truisms. Sometimes certain types of thinking can have a common cause and have a common outcome. Instead of lecturing people in that way, I would much rather teach people the methodology to discovering how these types of phenomena can be harmful. For example, if you have a certain thought and you believe it might be harmful, how do you test that it's going to be harmful? How do you test the theory? How do you predict an outcome? What are the methods, the steps that you take to be able to reach that conclusion? I certainly know a lot of this, but then I'm wanting to pass on that knowledge to my clients so that then they can use it for themselves. As much as I will emphasize that the mind is quite abstract and that sometimes we need to talk in abstract terms in order to understand it, as much as possible, I try to translate our discussions into concrete actions. In other words, being able to help you specify to yourself, what do I specifically need to do in order to approach my goals? I have, as I said, worked in the mental health industry, and while I am by no means a mental health practitioner, a lot of what I do as a life coach has been informed by working with the mentally ill and working with the psychology of mental illness and understanding what the mind can be, how the mind can potentially be a barrier to our goals and how to overcome those potential barriers. But overall, apart from all this, something that about which I'm incredibly passionate is being as authentic as I possibly can be, not trying to preach as a sum of all knowledge. For want of a better term, I try to negate hunches. I'm a human being too, and that I can only have a limited perspective of the world. So I try to not suggest too much which is based on my bias or what I believe, but rather what I've actually seen happen in other people, what I have seen work for other people and what I've seen not work for other people. And that's something that I do as a means of maintaining the quality of my service, but also ensuring that I'm not unduly influencing you in ways that I shouldn't be. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate the time that you've taken to learn more about what I do and how life coaching can potentially be of benefit to you. As I said, I'm not a mental health practitioner. I work with you on your lifestyle. If you are having concerns of mental health, then I strongly suggest you contact a licensed health professional now to help with that. I offer 10-minute free introductory consultations with all potential new clients so that we can discuss what you'd like to achieve and so that I can provide an honest assessment of whether I believe I can help or whether you believe that I am the best life coach for you. I very much look forward to speaking to you again in the future and being able to discuss more of the topics that fascinate me, and I hope they fascinate you just as much. In the meantime, take care and bye for now.